Yeah. You're joining the 164th episode of the People's Court. It's Saturday, June 21st, 2014, in what could be our final episode of the season. Join us as we discuss the NBA Finals, O'Bannon v. NCAA, and what we plan to do during the summer. Court is now in session.
And now here are your hosts, Chris, Lamont, and Adam.
If you'd like to contact the People's Court, please do so by calling us at 424-ADJOURN, that's 424-235-7633, or you can hit us up on Twitter at People's Court FM, and you might want to take a visit to Adam's Twitter because I'm sure he was crying over there. Adam, where's your Heat hat, man? I thought you'd come out here in full support even though they lost.
Oh, you know, I can go get that. I was on another call right before this, so I didn't have a chance to get it. But I'd be happy to put that on in support of the Heat. I was wearing it yesterday, but not right now.
So, I mean, I guess we should congratulate the Spurs.
Yeah, great job.
You know, because, wow, I mean, they not only beat the Heat, but they just dismantled them. And making really quick work of them in 5 games.
Yeah. It could easily have been 4 games. Without those 4 missed free throws, it could have been a sweep. That team was playing some of the best basketball I've ever seen, as Chris Bosh said. That was an amazing 5 games from the Spurs. And they played really, really well. Kawhi Leonard had his coming out party like Paul George did last year. Kawhi looks like he is set to become a true star just in time for Tim Duncan's sunset to start or finish, maybe. And they look like they could be very well set to go for the next 3 or 4 years. So congratulations to the Spurs, NBA champions for the 5th time.
Yeah, ironically, the last time we saw a finals that was decided I guess it was so one-sided, was the last time the Spurs played the Cavs.
Really? I felt like when the Heat played the Thunder, they won in 5-2.
Well, that was a 6-game series, wasn't it?
No, I believe it was a 5-game series.
Oh, well, the last time I remember just feeling like one team was so dominant over the other anyway. But you could be right. The Heat did handle the Thunder pretty easily, I guess you would say in that series. But the Spurs just looked like an unstoppable force.
They were incredible.
They look like a juggernaut.
Yeah. One of the best teams that we've seen offensively in a long time.
And who thought we would say that about the Spurs?
Yeah, the boring Spurs, the old, slow down, grind it out Spurs. Those are all misconceptions about what this team really does well. And Duncan and Ginobili and even Popovich have all said it throughout the playoffs. Being able to adapt is one of the things that makes Popovich such a great coach, because he's adapted with the rule changes, with the emergence of the corner 3 as a huge weapon. You know, when the Heat formed their big 3, it became an arms race, right? Teams were like, well, how can we get as many superstars on one team as we can? And you see teams like Houston trying to do that. And to compete with the Heat, they're trying to bring in as many stars as possible. The Lakers tried to do it when they brought in Nash and Howard. And the Spurs were like, you know what? Well, we're going to go a different route. Sure, we have 3 All-NBA players, 3 former All-Stars all on our team, but they're all near the end of their careers, or at least Duncan and Ginobili are.
Yeah.
So they took a different route and said, we're just going to build a 10 to 12 man team that passes, shoots, and defends well. And this is going to be our answer to the big 3. And it worked.
Yeah, I would disagree with you a little bit in the fact that I don't think the Heat started it. I think Boston. Well, first of all, there's never been a time in NBA history where you didn't try and get the star, right? Like that's always been the case. Try and get a star. But the Celtics really started the big three thing when they got Garnett, Allen, and Pierce. Like they were the first big three. And second, Miami has also been really, really adaptable throughout its entire time. They've done a great job of learning from their mistakes in their first season, creating pace and space. That's one of the things that makes Spoelstra such a good coach, is that he's very Popovichian in the sense that he adapts to what's going on as well. So there's no question at all that the Spurs already had the talent in place and have really gotten the most out of that team. And they have great development and a great eye for the draft. Absolutely.
Yeah, though the difference between the Heat's big three and Boston's big three is that the Celtics' run was really short. I mean, they won that title the first season they were together, and then they got back to the finals 2 years later. But they didn't have a run quite like the Heat, who've had 4 consecutive finals appearances plus 2 back-to-back titles. So it wasn't like I felt like you had to dethrone the Celtics because they were just going to stay at the top until somebody knocked them off.
Yeah.
Right? With the Heat, that's the way you feel. That's the way I felt anyways. Like, especially the season when Indiana was unable to knock them off. It was really, it really became like, who's going to be the team to take the Heat down?
Yeah.
So now the question becomes, and Adam, I'll ask you this first: has their window closed?
No, absolutely not. I don't think for a second their window is closed. And in fact, I don't like the window metaphor because essentially, depending on what the big three do, you can rebuild the house. You can choose what materials you want to build, and how that house is structured. So going into the offseason, I believe that the Heat only have one player under contract, and that's Norris Cole. Mario Chalmers is going to be a free agent. All 3 of the big three can opt out of their contracts, and in my opinion, probably will, in order to create the flexibility to create another championship. Shane Battier is going into retirement. Chris Anderson is going to be a free agent, and Ray Allen probably will retire. So there's a lot of roster flexibility coming into the offseason. Now, what they can do with that remains to be seen. But this season, barring this season, the Heat have not had a hard time bringing in pretty good free agents as a supporting cast. Now, that backfired because Shane Battier and Ray Allen got old and stopped hitting their shots. But I think they can absolutely rebuild. They've got the best player in the world at the prime of his talent, in the prime of his career. And they've got another top 20 player in Chris Bosh. I think the real interesting question is, how do you deal with Dwayne Wade coming into next season? Really convincing him to take a smaller role so that he can be more effective in shorter bursts, a la Manu Ginobili on the Spurs when he came off the bench and won 6th Man of the Year. Pat Riley described that conversation as one where you'd have to put the boxing gloves on. Clearly, Dwayne Wade is committed to being as impactful as possible, and he believes that's in a starting role. But my opinion that I've heard, and it's one that I've heard around the NBA, is that it's not who starts the game, it's who finishes the game. And if you can put Dwayne Wade in a position to succeed at the end of the game rather than in the first 3 quarters, I think the Miami Heat are going to be much more successful. But as to the idea that their window is closed, absolutely not. When you've got LeBron James and Pat Riley on the same team, anything is possible.
Well, anything is possible that I bring the question up because their flexibility relies on a huge contract restructuring from all of the big three. They have to, in order for them to have that flexibility, all of those guys have to opt out and then re-sign with the at lower annual salaries.
Yeah.
Right? But if you're LeBron James, Lamont, and you're looking at this situation, you have Chris Bosh, who's not as effective as he once was. You have Dwayne Wade, who looks like he's about to break down. So given that, if you do opt out, I mean, what's to stop you from looking elsewhere? And if he looks elsewhere, then the Heat's window is over, right?
Yeah, assuming he he went to get the hat.
Yeah, absolutely.
If he's looking elsewhere, then if he looks elsewhere and goes elsewhere, then their window is over. I agree that I agree with Adam that as long as they have LeBron, the window is not entirely shut down. All 3 would have to opt out and restructure their contract so that they have flexibility to get whomever. I mean, whomever it could be. They need rim protection. They, like Adam said, they got to figure out Dwayne Wade's role. Maybe some help at the point guard position. Get more. Strange it is to see they do need some athleticism. They would have to find 3-point shooting. So they have a lot of things that they have to address. Either this summer or next summer. Probably this summer. But I think convincing Dwayne Wade, who's already said that, who kind of scoffed at the idea of him opting out to take less money. I think that's the elephant in the room.
Yeah, so their fortunes really depend a lot on how much faith LeBron James has in Pat Riley. And if he has that faith, Adam, like you've alluded to, then absolutely they'll remain contenders until LeBron James is in a walker. As long as he's able to take the court, they're going to be a contender. It's just a matter of how much longer LeBron can carry a team, because the reason he went to Miami in the first place was, well, I wouldn't say the reason, but one of the reasons is to get out of a situation in Cleveland where the organization was so inept that they couldn't put a team around him that he didn't have to carry.
Right.
Suddenly, LeBron finds himself in the same situation where he's having to carry this team. He's doing so much. It wasn't that way last season. It wasn't that way the season before when they won the championship. But this season, it became that way. So it's more about now, can Pat Riley get the Heat big three to buy in to him and say, look, guys, I know I'm asking a lot of you to take pay cuts, but if you do and if you have faith in me, I can put the pieces around you guys again to keep this thing going. That's what it comes down to for me.
Well, there are a couple of caveats around that. I think it's slightly more complicated than just simply believing in Pat Riley. But really, if there's anybody in the NBA I'm going to believe in, it's Pat Riley. One is that the other option is to say, Mickey Arison, how are you going to reward us? If we take less, are you going to be willing to go into the taxpayer territory? They cut Mike Miller, who could have been a huge help for them this season, to stay out of taxpayer range. So they should avoid the repeater tax. Now, I'm not a student of the CBA, but I don't believe the Miami Heat were in the tax this year, so they should avoid a repeater tax if they go into it next year. But essentially, if the Big Three take less, can LeBron look at Mickey Arison, the owner of the Miami Heat, and say, if we're going to take less, I need you to be willing to spend to get us the kind of people we need around us in order to make another solid run, because clearly that team had nothing left at the end of the season. And they now have the roster flexibility to do that, but whether Arison and the Heat are willing to do that remains to be seen.
Yeah, that's certainly something that all three of those guys, and even Pat Riley, are in position to say. It's like, hey, look, we brought you 4 consecutive title appearances, 2 consecutive championships. Okay, if we take the pay cut, you have to be willing to spend that money and go into the repeater tax so that we can keep this game going. I think that's absolutely what they're going to say. Quick question from the audience. Donnie asks, does LeBron's legacy get tarnished if he leaves Miami for another team? What do you think, Lamont?
Absolutely not.
Really?
Absolutely not. If he surveys the landscape this summer or next summer and says, the best basketball situation, the best chance for me to compete for another championship is not in Miami, then that's his right to do so. And why would his legacy be tarnished? He presumably go somewhere else, probably make that team an instant title contender, or an instant favorite to win a title. If he wins a title, then so he's gonna be in the running for more MVPs. He's gonna break he's gonna break and re-break a ton of records. he's gonna go and he's gonna finish his career somewhere in the top 6 or 8 players, top 5 even of all time. Why would his legacy be tarnished if he went to play for another team?
I think the sentiment is that here's a guy who's it's the loyalty thing. If he leaves the Heat under his own volition, then he's a person who's left two teams and the only reason was to chase titles or because he lost faith in the organization or whatever. So I don't know. What do you think, Adam?
Well, I want to question the question because I can leave. Why would he leave? Where is a better choice for him to go? Not too many people have the cap space. So theoretically, does he leave for more rings and take less money elsewhere? Because not too many teams have the cap space, and I guess they could work out a sign and trade. But I don't think he's got a better chance for a title really anywhere else. I mean, the idea that he would ever go back to Cleveland is absolutely absurd, because the people who think he would ever go back to Cleveland are looking only at talent, not at organization. There's probably only one organization right now, in my opinion, that's run as well or better than the Miami Heat, and that's the Spurs. So I don't see LeBron going to the Spurs, one, because I don't think he wants to play in San Antonio, and two, I don't think he fits the Spurs system. I don't think the Spurs would have any interest in LeBron James. I think they could actually, they're one of the teams in the league, maybe the only one, who could say no to LeBron James and still, A, not be hated by their fans, and B, have a great chance at a championship. So in my opinion, I don't think there's a better spot for him to go. That's my first answer to the question. The second answer to my question is, who's talking? Bill Simmons, absolutely. Crushes his reputation with Bill Simmons. The basketball canon, absolutely. The basketball canon respects people who stay with one franchise for what I would consider to be naive reasons. It looks at sport as something that transcends the business. I think sport and business go hand in hand, as we see with the World Cup, the NCAA, and the NBA. And that might segue for us pretty easily. But for me, no, it absolutely doesn't tarnish his reputation, because LeBron is a businessman. He's an entrepreneur, and the thing that he's doing is the thing that he's selling is his talent. And an entrepreneur has the right to sell their talent in any market they want whatsoever. And so if he feels like there's a better opportunity for him to go out there and ply his trade, he absolutely should go out and do that. So he would not tarnish his opinion, or his reputation would not be tarnished in my eyes. And I know that really matters a lot to LeBron.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think he does care what fans think, and you're one of the people representing that. So absolutely, if you were to send him a tweet or something, say, hey, LeBron, I don't care if you leave or if you stay, that might mean a lot to him.
All right, I'll tweet it out.
But let's switch topics here, not topics, but teams, and talk about the Spurs, because you did bring up the fact that the Spurs could be one of the few teams that could turn down LeBron's services and not get laughed at for it. But the Spurs are at an interesting point right now because, well, all their guys are old. They were able to achieve another championship, but can they do it again? So the question is, I mean, has their window closed?
I'm gonna say no, that their window has not closed. I mean, where they're less than a week removed from winning the title, and they would have to remain the favorites, assuming that Duncan and Popovich come back for next season. Then they're solid. Of course, all their guys will be a year older. They would have to look to put more responsibility, give Kawhi Leonard more responsibility, guys like that. To try to go to their to what would be their third straight finals appearance. So I don't think their window is closed. They've still got all the pieces are still going to be there next season, as far as I know. So I don't think the window's closed. They've got maybe 1 or 2 more seasons in that, and then we'll see.
That's the question, right? Who's coming back? Because Boris Diaw and Patty Mills are both free agents, I believe. And, of course, Duncan and Ginobili are on the other side of 35. Actually, on the other side of 37. They're closer to 40 now. So if those guys decide to retire or not come back, then it that's the question. Who's going to come back for the Spurs that enables them to keep this run going? And I think the sentiment right now is all those guys want to come back. That's what they're talking about doing anyway. Adam, you were saying something?
Well, right. I mean, but I think, haven't we gotten tired of asking when the Spurs window is closed? I mean, stop doing that. It's ridiculous because the point is that it doesn't matter how old those players are. As long as Greg Popovich is at the helm, it doesn't matter because it's not the players, it's the system. We have to stop seeing the forest through the trees. The people who made the difference in this series weren't the big three. It was Danny Green and Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard isn't even considered part of the big three, and he was the Finals MVP. They've got a strong player at 23 in Kawhi Leonard. They've got excellent role players in Danny Green. They're only one or two pieces away. They could trade for a piece. They could draft. They're excellent in the draft. I'm sure they have 2 or 3 foreign players stashed away playing in Europe or in Asia. I don't know. Who knows who they're going to bring in? Look, the Spurs window is never closed because they don't rely on talent. They rely on the system. The only time the window closes is if Popovich leaves, and then we have to question who his replacement is and can they be as good as Popovich. No, their window is absolutely not closed. They're going to come back strong next year. Everybody, the window should have slammed shut last year after that crushing Game 7 defeat, Game 6 defeat, after Ray Allen's dagger three-pointer, and he didn't. They came back better than ever, and they came back strong. Tim Duncan is smart enough to know that he can slowly take a smaller role and push those role players into starting positions. That everybody has buy-in on that squad. And what Pat Riley said is basically that's what the Heat are going through too. They have to determine whether they're going to buy in or not. Timmy's all in for the Spurs. They never question that. And he sets the tone for the entire team. That tone will carry over now because Kawhi learned it from him. As long as they can keep that culture going, they're always going to be in the hunt.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it any better. And Donnie pretty much said the exact same.
We are back.
I'm back.
Yeah.
I'm back.
Okay, we're back. Hopefully, we still got the setup, and everybody can hear us. You can hear us.
Sweet.
Just fine. All right, I think we're good to resume. Look at that. This is the temporary glitch there. But as I was saying, Donnie pretty much said the exact same thing, saying that that R.C. Buford and Popovich always find a way to keep their window open and win. So, like I said, until those guys are done, then their window won't close.
Yeah.
Let's move on from the finals now, guys. And I think the other big thing happening in the NBA soon, anyway, is the draft. And as always, rumors are flying as the draft draws near. The first big news out of the draft, though, is the fact that projected number 1 pick Joel Embiid of Kansas had to have microsurgery on his foot and will potentially be out 4 to 6 months. The effects of that injury will probably be felt throughout the lottery, depending on where Embiid eventually is drafted.
Yeah. I haven't really. Basically, I think what it was with news when it was announced that he needs to have surgery. Basically, everybody is afraid of doing a repeat of Greg Oden. I think that's what everybody's afraid of. So who knows who knows what Cleveland does now, since they have the number 1 overall pick, and that's really all I care about.
Yeah, Andrew Wiggins is probably the biggest beneficiary of the injury. But as we saw last year, Cleveland kind of gets spooked by Nerlens Noel injury and making a leap and taking Anthony Bennett with the first pick. This season, fortunately, they don't have to make as far of a leap because there are other players, quality players available for them at the top of the draft. But who they pick and then the subsequent fallout, I mean, Embiid could drop all the way to the Lakers at 7 potentially, or where are the Celtics drafting? 6th, I think, yeah. 6th or 8th. He could fall, out of the top 5 pretty easily, and that's going to impact what everybody does in the draft, right? in what's already considered a deep draft, now one of its top prospects is injured. So I know you love to talk about the draft, Adam.
Well, I think the best story is like how committed Embiid is to not being on the Cavaliers. He broke his own foot so he wouldn't have to go first. That is amazing. Like the word of Dan Gilbert's incompetence is so strong that he actually injured himself to avoid going to the Cavs. It wasn't enough that his back injury was bad and that he wouldn't work out for anybody. Tried to shake Dan Gilbert. No, he had to actually break his own foot in order to avoid that. That's the story nobody's talking about. The commitment to getting to a team that's not the Cavs. He shot himself in the foot. Like, that's amazing. I would take Embiid as soon as I could because his commitment to winning is amazing.
Because he doesn't want to play for.
He doesn't want to play for.
I mean, that shows a real veteran savvy out of a guy who's 18, 19 years old, right? To be able to recognize that, hey, this is a terrible franchise. I can't go there. So what can I do to discourage them from taking me? Oh, microfracture surgery.
Fracture of foot.
That's a good one right there.
Show me those X-rays. Show them to me. Show me those X-rays. Yeah, I don't believe you. I don't believe he fractured his foot for a second. I would take Embiid in a heartbeat because I think everybody in the league knows he faked that so he didn't have to go to the Cavs. My 2 cents. The worst person off is now Andrew Wiggins because now he's got to go to the Cavs. He thought Embiid was going to take the bullet for him. Now teammates don't do that for each other. This is so Wiggins gets more money, but he has to play in Cleveland.
Yeah, I said he could be the biggest beneficiary. Maybe I worded that wrong.
How much more money does the first pick get? I don't know if it's worth whatever that amount is. I'm not sure.
A couple more million.
Not worth it to play in Cleveland with that.
Yeah, no.
The team's already feuding. Do they have a coach yet? I think maybe they just hired.
Yes. Speaking of
Blatt, right? The coach for the Russian basketball team. So they've got an untried coach, an egomaniacal owner, and a team that's already feuding with a first-year NBA coach. What can go wrong?
Untried coach. But let's talk about that move real quick because actually I think it's a really smart move by the Cavs. One of the few things that I actually can get behind. Bringing in David Blatt, who really got to the top of the profession coaching in European leagues.
Yeah.
And rather than going with, like the last 2 coaching hires the Cavs made, going with Byron Scott and then Mike Brown and firing them both after a single season, like those guys have proven that they're just mediocre NBA head coaches.
Yeah.
So hiring them wasn't really a stretch. Getting a guy like Blatt, here's a guy who's had a lot of success in Europe. Obviously, we don't know how that's going to translate to the NBA, but at least it's taking a chance on something new. Like, okay, if we get this guy, he might do something here that's unprecedented. So actually, I think that was an extremely smart move by the Cavs going and getting David Blatt rather than reaching for, I don't know, Lionel Hollins or
Doug Collins.
Doug Collins or, somebody else who's, I mean, we talk about the coaching carousel.
Yeah.
And Blatt's a guy who wasn't there.
Yeah.
So going and getting, I actually applaud that move. I think that was really smart by the Cavs.
Well, that's one way you could look at it. The other way you could look at it is the only person who would actually coach the Cavs was the guy who was coaching the Russian national team. They couldn't actually get an American coach to do it. They had to go to Europe and find somebody who would actually coach for them. The guy was literally in Siberia. That's who they had. That's the only person who would coach for them. They offered Calipari $80 million, and he wouldn't do it. So they had to go get somebody who was coaching in Siberia.
Well, I like the move. But speaking of, well, I'm going to skip the Kevin Love stuff. We talk about trade rumors and stuff, and it's really hard to speculate, right? But since we're talking about the draft and subsequently the NCAA, I want to move into the discussion about O'Bannon v. NCAA.
Wait. If we're just going to skip the Kevin Love thing, I just have to say, how do you not pull the trigger for Klay Thompson? That's absurd. Okay, you can go on now.
Okay, I mean, we could circle back around to it.
It's all posturing.
Yeah, let's
Everybody's talking.
Let's transition here into this O'Bannon versus NCAA because this is a trial that's been in the making for about 5 years now, and it's finally gone to trial. It's been about a week and a half that the trial has been underway. And if you're not familiar with the case, Ed O'Bannon, a former UCLA Bruin, and about 19 other plaintiffs sued the NCAA because the NCAA has been using their likenesses in television, broadcast, video games, and other consumer products, even though they no longer play in the NCAA. And there's language in the NCAA contract that says that the NCAA is allowed to use their likeness in perpetuity. So O'Bannon is challenging that because obviously he wants compensation now that he's no longer an NCAA player for the licensing and all that stuff that goes along with it. This is a seminal trial because it could fracture the NCAA's long-held standard of amateurism, and if it does, could actually open the floodgates to NCAA players getting paid.
Right. So in the last few months, we've had a lot of movement towards the NCAA having to change its business model. There was the ruling in Illinois that said athletes at private colleges were eligible to join could unionize, and I forget what happened with the Northwestern, what the vote was, but they were given that option.
They didn't publicize the vote yet because it's still getting challenged.
Yeah,
like the fact that they were accepted by the National Labor Board is getting challenged. So I mean, there's still a lot to go on with that. That's one of the things, again, like you said, that's could break open these floodgates, along with the O'Bannon trial.
And then this trial, which I've kind of had my kept an eye out on for updates for the last 6 or 7 years, or however long ago it was that O'Bannon decided to pursue this lawsuit. And I think it's great for men's football players, college, football and basketball players playing at the NCAA level, because the whole idea of amateurism is not a standard; it's a facade. The term student athlete is, again, another facade that was created by Walter Byers back in the 40s or 50s, somewhere thereabouts, as a way for so that schools could avoid paying insurance on their athletes.
So here's the language directly from the NCAA Division I manual that talks about the principle of amateurism. This is quite long, so bear with me. It says, student athletes shall be amateurs in an intercollegiate sport, and their participation should be motivated primarily by education and by the physical, mental, and social benefits to be derived. Student participation in intercollegiate athletics is an avocation, and student athletes should be protected from exploitation by professional and commercial enterprises.
That's straight from the NCAA?
That's straight from the Division I manual.
Never mind that the NCAA is a commercial enterprise.
Exactly.
Never mind that in order to accept an athletic scholarship, you have to sign annual contracts, such as that gives permission for the NCAA, the school you play for, the colleges, the conference that the college is within to license to sell your likeness on jerseys and video games and magazines and whatever and whatever Uh,
So that was one of the questions. So one of the unique things about this trial is that it's not a trial by jury; it's a trial by judge. So the judge, Claudia Wilkin, is actually the person who will be deciding the outcome. So when NCAA President Mark Emmert was on the stand and getting questioned by the NCAA's lawyers, Wilkin actually jumped in. And the things that you're questioning are precisely the things that she was trying to get more clarification on. And so she asked Emmert things like, if I can find it real quickly here. Do you consider those things that you just mentioned, all of the video games and the fact that anytime you see an NCAA player behind him are huge advertisements and the fact that they're featured in commercials and blah, 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 all that stuff. So she said, do you consider that to be exploitation of them? And Emmert, he kind of says, this rule has been discussed by the membership, and the answer would be kind of both. The assumption is that by converting them into professional athletes, they are no longer a student athlete. They are not part of the academic environment. They're not in a position to gain the advantages of being a student athlete and being a student at that university. They're not there avocationally, but vocationally. And then, so Wilkin asks again, do you consider that to be exploitation of them? Yes, he replied in this language, yes. So all of the things that the NCAA does are things that the NCAA says that it needs to protect players from. And that's where the big hypocrisy is in this whole thing. So one of the other things that came out in this trial, when O'Bannon was actually on the stand, and it's kind of a weird line of questioning from the NCAA, but they asked O'Bannon, let's bring this up here. They asked O'Bannon, so should high school athletes be paid if games are on TV? And O'Bannon said yes, if they're generating revenue for their school. And he said, what about Little League players for appearing on TV? And then O'Bannon said, absolutely, if they're generating revenue. So let's talk about that. Should high school players and Little League players get paid if they're appearing on TV?
Are they generating revenue?
Well, clearly they are. If they're on TV, then like ESPN is selling advertisements against that programming. So yeah,
absolutely. Then yeah.
ESPN always shows the Little League World Series. I don't know about. High school games will probably be shown on whatever local cable.
No, those high school games are broadcast on ESPN too. Maybe not ESPN two, but ESPN also.
As well.
Okay.
As well. So I mean, they broadcast, like LeBron James was on national television a number of times when he was in high school. These guys, Andrew Wiggins, Jabari Parker. These guys have all been on television. They all participate in like McDonald's All-American games, and those All-American games get broadcast nationally. So yeah, all of these players, not just basketball players, but football players too, when they're in high school, if they played a big enough program, do get broadcast nationally on television, not just the local television broadcast. So Adam, you're saying, yeah, you believe they should be paid?
Absolutely. Why would they not get paid? Well, they're essentially using their toil, their work, in order to generate revenue. I don't see why. So here's my question. Essentially, so Little League players would be doing it for the good of the league, because I guarantee you that the National Little League, or the Little League Association, National Little League Association, gets paid for it. Why would the people who are generating those funds not receive something for it? Yeah, I absolutely think they should get paid for it. No question about it.
Well, the trouble, at least, yeah. Well, the trouble with high school and little leaguers is that if you're gonna pay them, then you're gonna call them employees, and then you run into child labor laws and.
Well, but no, I don't think so, because think about it this way: if a kid is on a talent show, do they get paid for that? If they go on, I don't know what talent shows, America's Got Talent or something like that, Do child actors go? I mean, look, we've got child actors. They're on TV. There are laws that govern that. Yeah, you can absolutely do it. It's not as though children are barred from being on television. Look at Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen. They were on television for years, and it wasn't a hard time, right? So there are ways to compensate them. It's just the people who are getting the money don't want to give it away. They've got a good thing going. Why would they want to give it up? So absolutely, if someone is generating income off of your labor, whether it's vocation or avocation, let's just toss those out, you should definitely get compensated for it.
I don't have an argument from that.
Yeah, unfortunately, we all hold the same position here, right?
Yeah.
No, we're not going to disagree with each other because we all feel that it's a long overdue that the NCAA's label of the student athlete and this principle of amateurism is just a load of crap and that it needs to end.
Yeah.
One of the things that I personally feel should happen is that the NCAA should cease to exist and that football, basketball, and those huge revenue-generating sports should no longer be part of universities and colleges around the nation. I mean, obviously, they can still have things like recreational sports, and there's a term for this. Intramural leagues. Yeah, they obviously still do that stuff because that's the kind of benefit that the whole reason that sports got introduced into education in the first place is because obviously they say an active, healthy body produces an active, healthy mind. Right? And obviously it's turned into this huge commercial enterprise as a result of that. But intramural sports, that's okay, let's go play some sports because we want to go have fun and we want to keep our bodies active. I mean, that's kind of the spirit of it and not the way the NCAA has gone about it the past 50 years.
Yeah.
So
that's authentically amateur. Yeah.
Exactly. That's authentically. You said it perfect. That's authentically amateur.
If you're paying to watch somebody play, you're not an amateur anymore.
Say that one more time.
If you're paying to watch somebody play, they're probably not amateurs.
Now, the NCAA would have you believe that they are because they protect them. They protect them.
No, they want us to believe that so they can keep taking their money. They protect them from all of that money. It would ruin their lives.
I'm gonna ask a question I already know the answer to, but you don't think by providing a full scholarship, free education and all expenses and whatever is adequate payment?
No, so that's the argument, right? That of course, and those players get compensated; they get a free education. And no, I absolutely disagree with that.
Yeah, well, I would say that the NCAA's that whoever holds that scholarship argument, I would define a professional as someone who offers services in exchange for salary or compensation or fee. And if the argument is, oh, hey, they get a free education, that they are being compensated, then you are in effect making them professionals, and they should be able to make some money on the side if someone wants to pay them a few dollars to sign their name.
Yeah, the idea that you can lose eligibility, that you can lose your scholarship simply by, getting money or taking money from an outside source is ludicrous. And the idea that the scholarships that they're giving these kids is adequate payment is ridiculous as well. I mean, Chapaz Napier, after Connecticut won the national title this year in the NCAA March Madness tournament, I mean, one of the things that he says, like, yeah, there are nights that I go hungry. There are days that I go hungry, I can't eat. Why? Because he can't get money on his own, and the scholarship that he's given is not enough to pay for his living expenses. So sometimes he has to go hungry. That's crazy to think about, right? Like, oh yeah, they're getting a free education. No, they're getting a scholarship that doesn't pay them enough money to live. Yet they're barred from trying to earn money in any sort of fashion. It's ridiculous.
Well, let's also look at the education that they're offered. More and more students are coming out and saying they didn't get an education, and that tutors were essentially turning papers in for them. That when you're in these programs, your education comes second, not first. The primary thing is not your education. You're not going to class like a normal student. And I think that's what we lose out on, is that people who proffer the education argument tend to think of these basketball players as normal students who play basketball on the side, and that's never the case with the high-pressure sports. They are always athletes first, students second. So if you're going to put the education first, let's actually do that. But then they won't have time to play at the level that, to practice and play at the level that they wanted to play at. So the idea of the education is farcical, and I think we all know that it's farcical and needs to be dropped, and they need to be compensated for what they're doing, because they'll be better off in the long run if they're compensated.
And that's exactly what Rashad McCants, who was a former basketball player in the North Carolina Tar Heels, came out and said recently.
Yes.
Right, that he was in. I think he started off with one major, but then was encouraged by people within the program to switch majors because the classes within that major were easier. They fit the basketball schedule better, and it would be easier for him to maintain his academic eligibility because he was close to losing it.
Yes.
And all those things like players having other people write papers for them and not showing up to class and all that stuff. You're hearing more and more players, once of course they become far removed from the NCAA, come out and say these things. And of course, Carolina has denied it. Head coach Roy Williams has denied it, even though McCann says that there's no possible way Williams would have been unaware of what was going on. Like it's farcical. I like that word. You're dropping great terms on us today, Adam. Now the vocabulary is expanding. Farce. It's ridiculous.
Last year there was a documentary. It's called School: The Price of College Sports. It's available on Netflix. So if you have a Netflix account, you can watch it. And in it, I believe it was Arian Foster. Well, Arian Foster is definitely in the movie, and I believe it was him that said, "Well, if we're students first, then why when they're being recruited in their junior and senior years of high school, why doesn't the head of the history department come, or why doesn't a chemistry professor come to recruit them?
Yeah.
Why is it always a scout or an assistant coach or the head coach of whatever sport it is that they play in high school? Why is that their first point of contact?" Which I thought is
that's a great rhetorical question.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, the irony, the hypocrisy, it's close to ending, fortunately. And I don't know how much longer this trial is going to go on, but there's this trial, and the judge, Claudia Wilkin, is also seeing another trial which tries to cut to the heart of what the NCAA is doing as well, plus the unionization fight that's going on. All three of those things could bring down this, what amounts to a cartel that the NCAA has enjoyed over the last, I don't know how long has this been, 50 years, since they've really started cashing in on it. So those billions and billions of dollars are in jeopardy, and that's of course why they're fighting it so hard.
But they're not.
It comes down.
Like they're just going to start going to the people who earned them, right? Like it's not like the NCAA needs to even disappear. They should. I mean, there is work that the NCAA does, but they're profiting disproportionately for the work that they do. They should still get paid for the things that they do and do well. Organizing basketball tournaments, they're really good at that, and they should get a proportionate amount of money for that. Just like the players who play in those tournaments, for whom people turn in to watch, because people don't tune in to watch people organize a basketball tournament. That's not very exciting. But those people, the people who play, should be compensated in proportion to what they do, just in the way that the NCAA should be compensated proportionately for what they do.
Right, so that's the thing within the NBA, right? There's pretty much all professional leagues. There's a split of basketball-related income or sport-related income that gets divided amongst the organizers and the athletes. And right now, the NBA has like a pretty close to a 50-50 split between the NBA and its athletes. Yeah. Right now, the NCAA split is 100% for the NCAA.
That's pretty unfair.
And somehow they think it's equitable. I mean, they feel completely justified and obviously want to continue that arrangement forever. And like you said, there are things that the NCAA does that they do very well. But it's time that split changes. And if it can't change in a reasonable manner, then I think it's time for the NCAA to just cease to exist.
Yeah.
That's just the way I feel about it. Okay, we can circle back around now, guys. I've had my piece on that matter. Unless you have anything else to add, I think we've all pretty much echoed sentiments here about it. So let's circle back around. And I know we're at the 48-minute mark, around about the 50-minute mark of this show, but considering it might be our last episode of the season, let's continue to talk here. I mean, we kind of tabled the Kevin Love discussion. Let's circle back around to Kevin Love and what might possibly happen with him. And not only Kevin Love, but other things that could happen in the offseason that we're all interested to see, beginning with Kevin Love. So the rumor, the prevailing rumor right now is that the Golden State Warriors are pursuing Kevin Love and potentially trading David Lee, Klay Thompson, and a draft pick for Kevin Love and Kevin Martin. They could also involve a third team to include a draft pick in this year's draft because the Warriors don't have a pick this year. So it would be future draft considerations. But teams like the Lakers and Suns both have picks in this year's draft and would be interested in joining that trade. So, Adam, you were saying earlier, why wouldn't you trade for Klay Thompson?
I just don't even understand how you would hesitate to trade Klay Thompson for Kevin Love. That's ridiculous. Klay Thompson, to me, is a very good shooter, but he's not good enough to keep. Kevin Love is a proven commodity. He wants to win. Unless Love is balking at a sign and trade, like you don't trade Klay Thompson to get 1 year of Kevin Love, I can understand that. But if you can get a sign and trade for Kevin Love, for Klay Thompson, and a pick, you do it. You absolutely. You always trade 3 quarters or 4 quarters for $1. There's no question about that in my mind. I can't see any reason that you would hesitate to pull the trigger to get Kevin Love. You very rarely get a chance at a top 10 player in the NBA, and there's no question in my mind. Maybe top 15 for Kevin Love, but in my opinion, he's a top 10 player. And Klay Thompson is a pretty maybe 2-dimensional player. He's definitely not a 1-dimensional player, but he's not 3. He's not going to be a superstar. He's a good spot-up shooter, but I can't imagine why you wouldn't just take that deal and run if you're Golden State.
Well, I think if the deal was just for Love, for Martin, essentially straight up, then they'd entertain it more. But they have to include David Lee to make the salaries. Well, I guess not make the salaries match. And it's Kevin Love's under contract now, right? So they have to include David Lee to make the salaries match. And I think they're worried about giving up too much. David Lee and Klay Thompson. And obviously, they're more enamored with Thompson than with Lee. They'd rather include Lee and, of course, something else in that trade.
Yeah. The thing that would make teams hesitant to pull the trigger on a deal for Kevin Love is the fact that he's technically only under contract for next season, and then he has an early termination option, and he can become a free agent. So that. And who knows what that leads to down the road. So that would be the one thing that would be holding him back, holding teams back. But I pretty much agree with Adam that like Klay Thompson probably to me isn't a deal breaker for me. Like if I were the Warriors and that's what Minnesota wanted, I probably would do it too.
I think the issue is that they potentially value Klay Thompson a little bit more than we do. Because I agree with both of you guys that if I had an opportunity, if that was the deal breaker, like, okay, Minnesota says throwing Thompson, the deal is done, it's done. I think I would do it in a heartbeat. But that's if you don't think that Klay Thompson is a potential All-NBA player. If you do believe Klay Thompson is a potential All-NBA player, like the Warriors might think, like Charles Barkley has intimated many times that he feels that Thompson's a future All-Star and the best young 2-guard prospects in the league, then you might hesitate a little bit to pull that trigger, especially when, as you guys have both mentioned, there's no guarantee that Kevin Love stays on, unless of course it's a sign and trade. But it's unlikely that they would sign and trade him because I don't think they even can. I don't think Kevin Love's eligible for an extension this offseason. So I don't know if they can extend him and then trade him. It has to be just a trade, and in that event, Kevin Love's going to be a free agent next season, and he could do the same thing that Dwight Howard did to the Lakers. Go there for a season. If he doesn't like it, he didn't have a good experience, then just leave in free agency, leave the Warriors in free agency, and then the Warriors would have given up David Lee, Klay Thompson for a single season of Kevin Love, and will that be worth it?
No, not for a single season. Well, why wouldn't he be eligible for a sign and trade? Because his extension is until next year?
Yeah, he's not a free agent this season. He can opt out of his deal next season.
He's under contract for next season. For 2016 is a player option.
Okay.
Right. So that's why he can't sign and trade him, because he's still under his contract is still.
Got it. Still in effect.
Still in effect. So I think this is very interesting where Kevin Love ends up, because where he ends up could change a lot. There's even rumors that the Spurs could be looking into getting Kevin Love.
I think this is where we're at with Kevin Love. Clearly, he's not happy in Minnesota. I think the relationship between him, a few of his teammates, Flip Saunders, maybe even all the way up to whoever owns the team. I can't think of him. Blaine Taylor? No, not Blaine Taylor. Yeah, Blaine Taylor. Whoever
Minnesota?
it is. Yeah,
Blaine Taylor.
Blaine Taylor. I think the relationship has soured to where he is in Minnesota for at most one more season. So every team that has assets or cap space or whatever is trying to see most teams that have flexibility are trying to see how they can, if they can land it, or how they can do it. So Boston has come up. Houston has come up as trying to make a run at both him and Carmelo and LeBron. Maybe anything that Chicago would do to make room for Carmelo Anthony, they could conceivably do for both Kevin Love and LeBron. So any team that's looking, most teams are looking into it, or they could do. Or if you're Minnesota and you're Flip Saunders and Blaine Taylor, you can tell Kevin Love, hey, look at what happened with LaMarcus Aldridge and Portland. 2 seasons ago, they sucked, and he was ready. LaMarcus Aldridge was close to demanding a trade. Well, this season, they made the playoffs. They're up and coming. Now everybody's happy. We could do the same here. We still have talent. We lost a lot of close games last season that we could consider fluke losses. That maybe they would have been in the playoffs. So that's the other scenario. But I don't think he stays in Minnesota. Where he ends up.
The Flip Saunders boat has already sailed. If he comes out and says publicly that Kevin Love has no right to be frustrated, you're done. Like, I can't imagine how a coach/GM says that about their star player unless they're absolutely ready to trade them. Because Kevin Love is already upset about the fact that he didn't get a max contract, and Ricky Rubio, he of the 25% shooting, I think, did get a max contract. And then Flip comes out and says he has no right to be frustrated. It's a playbook. I don't know. I'm baffled. Like, you clearly don't want to keep Kevin Love. Everybody has a right to be frustrated, period. You don't get to tell other people what they have a right to feel. And secondly, I don't think that's how you treat your star. I don't think you have to coddle a star. I think you say, I don't really understand where he's coming from, but Kevin has the right to feel whatever he wants, and we'll work that out internally. But for him to come out in the news and tell Kevin Love that he has no right, I can't tell if he's completely inept or if he's just essentially trying to drive down his trade value. I don't know. It made no sense to me. There's no way Kevin Love stays. There's nothing that, in my opinion, Flip Saunders, who hired himself as a coach, are you kidding me? He wasn't a good coach ever. And he's probably not a great GM. He's not a great GM because he hired himself as a coach. Any GM who would hire him as a coach is not very good. Complete mess in Minnesota, and they're losing their best player because they've got great faith in Georgie Dang. Like, that's what it boils down to. This is great for Georgie. He's going to come out and play really well. But, yeah, Kevin Love's gone. As soon as he can be, he is out of Minnesota, and he'll probably play for the Lakers. He'll do 1 year wherever, and then he'll come to the Lakers with Russell Westbrook, and Kobe can finally retire. That's my scenario.
Yeah, I don't know how any GM who has drafted Ricky Rubio, Johnny Flynn, Ty Lawson, there's more. I'm missing some. Okay, they drafted like 5 point guards, and the one that they kept out of all of them is Ricky Rubio.
No, wait.
And Johnny Flynn.
No, but you're putting a lot of what David Kahn did on Flip Saunders. That was Kahn's mess. Kahn messed all that up.
Okay. Oh, you're right. But Kevin Love was still there for all of it. And for a player to have experienced all of that, and you can't be frustrated. You have no right to be frustrated. Are you kidding me?
Oh, yes.
Like, I could have been paired with Ty Lawson. That's a guy you guys drafted. But instead, I got like 1.5 seasons of Johnny Flynn, whoever the hell that is. I had to wait for Ricky Rubio to get here, and then you paid him more than me. And
you want
to pay him more than me, yet he hasn't done anything. Yeah, I mean, I could be a little frustrated. Just a little bit frustrated. Like you said, regardless of the fact that you're right, every person has a right to feel frustrated just because they're a human being.
Right.
But when you look at the facts, I mean, he has every reasonable right to have been frustrated with his situation. And for anybody to say that he didn't, that's just ridiculous.
Here's my favorite part. This is the quote from Flip Saunders. Just like I told Kevin Garnett, he didn't have a right to be frustrated. Look how well that turned out for Kevin Garnett. He got traded to Boston and won a championship. Like, he's quoting a situation that worked out horribly for Minnesota. I don't understand what he's doing. I can't imagine what kind of world Flip Saunders lives in where this is okay to say to the media. How inept can you be? And how inept can you be to hire him?
I think the Garnett quote was he's trying to, because at the time Kevin Garnett was one of those was the rare person who didn't voice his frustration. So earlier in the show we talked about loyalty. At the time when he was in Minnesota, I think they made the playoffs twice, and they were terrible every other single time. Like every other single.
The time that Kevin Garnett was in Minnesota.
Yeah, they made the playoffs.
No, they made the playoffs a number of times, but they were ousted in the first round every single year, except for the season they made the conference finals with Sprewell and Cassell. But they made a lot. He went to a lot of playoffs. He just never got out of the first round.
Yeah, but
was that because Flip Saunders was coaching?
it might have been, but the point, there was a point in time where everybody was wondering, where everybody knew he wanted out of Minnesota, but he never asked for a trade. And I think maybe that's what Flip is trying to do with Kevin Love is, hey, we used to have this guy who was, until he got old, was the type of player that everybody says they want to root for. Why can't you be more like him?
Yeah,
I still think that's something that's good to say to Kevin Love.
Yeah,
I agree with you.
I'm going all kinds of wrong ways about this because after Garnett got traded and after Garnett had some time to reflect, and what did he say? He said, "I wish I would have asked out of there sooner. I wasted so many years of my career there by being loyal. That had he asked out sooner, I mean, maybe he would have had more opportunity at championships. I mean, he obviously got the one, but."
I'm trying to figure out at what point how does that motivate anybody? You know what? You have a right to be frustrated. Just go out there and play. How is that going to motivate anyone? I'm writing Minnesota off. They had a chance. Rick Adelman wanted to coach that team. Come on. No, wait. The other one.
That's something that you can do. That's something you can do as a head coach behind closed doors, having a heart-to-heart conversation with your guy. But when you say that directly to the media about a guy who's on the fence about staying with your organization, like you said, that's pushing him over the edge. A guy that has 1 foot out the door already, you're closing the door and pushing him out with that comment. The other player that I think everybody's interested in where he lands is Carmelo Anthony. And he still hasn't made a decision yet whether or not to opt out of his contract. I think the deadline for that is 2 days from now, right?
I don't know if he can.
You don't know he can.
No. I mean, I don't know if he. I don't know technically when the time period is for when.
I think he's within that time. I think he has to formally opt out of his contract by June 23rd or June 25th if he wants to opt out. Otherwise, he won't become a free agent. He'll be locked in next season with the Knicks. So he's got a couple of days. Yeah, Carmelo Anthony. So he's got a couple of days to decide. And I think at this point, the odds of him staying with the Knicks are even less of Kevin Love staying in Minnesota.
He's gone.
He's done.
He's gone. I don't see. I don't see any reason why he would stay. There's no reason. There's absolutely no reason for him to stay.
So if you're Carmelo Anthony and you're looking at potential suitors, and those have ranged from the Bulls to the Rockets to the Heat, what situation looks most appealing to you if you're Carmelo Anthony?
Chicago.
Chicago.
I actually think Chicago. I mean, we already know we already know about Thibodeau's resume as a head coach. We already know that they've got Joakim Noah, and assuming we know that they need his scoring. He doesn't have to worry about the defense and the rebounding as much because he's got Joakim Noah and presumably Todd Gibson and Jimmy Butler and whoever. I think Chicago looks the best.
And plus, he'd be working with the head coach who's hidden like defensive liabilities in the past, and working with guys like Ray Allen, who, despite being a starting member of that Boston Celtics team was one of the greatest defensive forces that we've seen in a long time when they came out in 2008. So, yeah, for all those reasons, Chicago certainly looks good. Adam, where would you go if you're Carmelo Anthony?
Sorry, I have to agree with Lamont here. Chicago seems like his best option to win a ring. He probably could get paid more elsewhere. He might even get a max contract in Chicago. I think the questions that surround the Chicago series or the Chicago team are essentially, is Tom Thibodeau going to stay? Tom Thibodeau going to stay? I know that he has been clashing with Reinsdorf, who's the owner, and Paxson, who's the GM. He's been clashing with the front office quite a bit, so there were rumors last season that Thibodeau might not stay. So I'd want, and you know how sports is, you can get a guarantee and have it be broken the next day. That would be my only concern, is who are you going to bring as head coach? And Chicago does not have a stellar history as being a great front office either, despite those 6 championships in the Jordan era. Jordan clashed with Reinsdorf and the other guy.
Krause.
Yes, Krause quite often, and nearly left Chicago a number of times. So they don't have all of their cards in order either. Miami's clearly not a realistic destination, and I don't think that anybody really wants Carmelo to go there. Anybody on the West Coast could probably use Carmelo's skills, but I don't know who's willing to give up pieces for him. So to me, Chicago, you stay in the soft Eastern Conference. You give yourself a better chance to get into the playoffs. You're playing with 2 top 20 players in Joakim Noah and a healthy Derrick Rose. That's the other consideration. Can Derrick Rose stay healthy? And even if he can't, you still have Joakim Noah and a solid coach and a great system under your belt. Chicago seems like a no-brainer to me, but I don't play in the NBA, so I don't know.
Yeah, it seems like all the pieces are there for Carmelo. But here's where I would have pause. If the Heat are really serious about bringing him aboard. And we talked about how Pat Riley has been able to do this in the past. That's something I would seriously consider, because to me the biggest thing when you're a superstar like that is to find the right organization. It's not about finding the right guys to play with, to me. It's about finding the right organization. And that starts from the top with a good owner, with a good general manager, and then a good head coach. If you have those foundations there, that's, for me, that was the big reason why I felt LeBron chose correctly when he decided to go to Miami, because they had all those things in place, right? So if I'm Carmelo Anthony, that's a reason why Miami is such a desirable destination. Of course, they have LeBron there, and that makes it a desirable destination, of course. But you mentioned the issues already that Thibodeau has with Chicago's front office. And we already know that Chicago was unwilling to spend in the luxury tax.
True.
They've been cheap about it for years and years and years.
True.
So given those two things, those are the two reasons I'd hesitate to go to Chicago. But then I'd look to Miami and I'd be like, well, we know Mickey Harrison spent in the luxury tax before. We know Pat Riley has worked wonders with the salary cap in the past to put together a championship unit. And we know that Spoelstra has proven himself now as a really quality head coach. So I'd be looking at that like, Pat, if we can make this happen, Riles, let's do this. I'm in it. I'm going to go with you on this one, Riles, if you're willing to do, and you're able to get everybody to buy into that. If not, then Chicago's a good fallback.
Yeah.
And he'll get more money there in Chicago anyway. But if he's able to work out situation in Miami, that would be my destination there. No state income tax? Let's go. I'm going to Florida.
I just think it's one of those. But see, to me, Carmelo would be doing what he did to New York again. It's that same situation where when he went to New York, Masai Ujiri, who was Denver's GM at the time, essentially fleeced the Knicks for a bunch of assets. And by the time Carmelo got there, all the good talent went to Denver. And I'm afraid that he would do that same thing in Miami, that essentially his presence there and his cap hold, his piece of the salary cap would keep them from getting the supporting pieces that they need. Because Miami really needs a stronger second unit if they're going to compete with the behemoth that is the Spurs.
Yeah, but I mean, they've got Bosh, James, and Wade, so they've already got players there in abundance of what New York had. I mean, New York had Tyson Chandler and a broken down Amari Stoudemire after everything was said and done in New York after that trade. So that's the difference there. And again, this is all about buying into Riley. I mean, if he's able to convince all four of those guys to take less money, then
sure, if you can make it work,
like you said, he can make it work, because you don't need to bring in. Obviously, you need to have a healthy bench, right? But the amount of talent that you need to support those four guys is dramatically less than the amount of talent you need to support Carmelo Anthony and Amari Stoudemire.
Yeah, but look, if you can get
the Knicks are just a poorly run organization too to begin with. So
right. If you can get Dwayne Wade to come off the bench and finish games, if you can finish games with Carmelo, LeBron, Chris Bosh, and Dwayne Wade, life is good.
Yeah, and that would open the door, right? That would open the door for Dwayne Wade to take on a Ginobili type of role.
Yeah, well,
Carmelo in there.
You just have to work on how he views himself, and he still views himself as a contender, which I think the rest of the world has moved on from. It's getting him to believe that. But I could talk all day about how you convince Dwayne Wade he's not the player he used to be.
What if Carmelo terminates his contract with the Knicks, and then signs with Miami for like the mid-level exception?
Wow.
Not gonna happen. I'm just saying. Well,
wow.
Wow.
Like, we have never seen a player make that big of a sacrifice in the history of the league that I can recall. Like, he's a player who can command.
Yeah, he would go for
9 figures.
He is scheduled
10 figures.
Yeah, he is scheduled to make, assuming he doesn't exercise the termination option, he's scheduled to make $23.3 million next season. The mid-level exception is around $5
million, I think,
or something like that.
Yeah.
So, and I'm just curious. I just want to see the. I would love for it. The only reason why I would want to see that happen is to look at to laugh at the fallout. To laugh at the fallout. The owners would get. I don't know what the owners would do. I don't know what they would do.
Well, a lot of the things that happened in the latest CBA, all of the luxury tax penalties, the repeater penalties, those escalating things, were to stop teams from like Miami from hoarding all the talent. Right, but so what the players and teams have figured out that they can still operate within the confines of the luxury tax and salary cap as long as they're willing to make some sacrifices. So then when collective bargaining comes up again, you'd have a league trying desperately once again to figure out how to stop player movement, which is essentially what all those things were about. You know, like the fact that you can't earn as much money if you leave teams. You know, your existing team can offer you an extra year plus more money. You know, all those things that they try to do to limit player movement. They try to figure out more ways to limit player movement. But as long as you have players who are willing to work within the system and make sacrifices, then they're exerting their power.
No, see, I actually disagree with you 100% on this. So the CBA was essentially to save owners money. It was to renegotiate the split of BRI, which they got. They got 4% more of the billions of dollars the NBA earns, which is a significant piece of the pie. And secondly, it was to keep their losses, keep the cost of teams down. So essentially, if people like Carmelo start taking less money, the owners win. Because again, this isn't about team parity. It's about owners versus players. When we start talking about the CBA is to limit the losses that teams have to pay in order to keep their players. Because again, if we had no salary cap, you could essentially pay LeBron $50 million, and somebody would, right? Somebody would pay LeBron $50 million and still surround him with a team. So the player, I hate to say this because I love to see great players come together. But if Carmelo Anthony takes $5 million, the owners win. Because they get to have a great team and they still don't have to pay what they should have to pay for it. They have to pay market value. Because Carmelo Anthony is worth at least $23 million, if not more, depending on how you feel about defense, right? So actually, if Carmelo did take the MLE, the owners would be the ones who are winning, in my opinion, not the players.
You're looking at that from a really economic standpoint, and you really cut to the heart of the situation. It's about money. And if players are willing to take less money in that scenario, obviously it doesn't hurt the owners. The only thing that it really does is affect the image of the league. And of course, the league doesn't want you to know that it's strictly about money. Right. The reason why they fought so hard to lower the amount of money players earn was, you know, of course, to save them money, to make them more money.
Yeah.
All of those things there. That's all true. But I think that the repeater tax, the luxury tax, all of those things that are in the CBA are really a response to teams being able to spend over the cap, right? And they're trying to discourage that because they have to pretend like parity is something they want to achieve, even though it doesn't really matter to them. Even though we've seen through years and years of the Lakers and Celtics and Bulls and
Spurs.
Well, this team's dominating the league. When that happens, then it's really good. Teams like Miami, it's really good for the league when those teams are dominant and those teams are good. When you have big stars and big markets, it's great for the league. So, but they still have to pretend like they care about those sorts of things. So then I think they would still fight to put those things into the next CBA. Even though bottom line is, like you said, Adam, if Carmelo decides to play for less money, it's a win for the owners. Yeah, as a collective.
Yeah. Also, I came up with that saying. I'm curious to see if he would actually get credit from us fans and those in the media for sacrificing what would essentially be $18 million to go win a title, or would everybody just hate him and via extension, LeBron James and Miami Heat, all that. I'm just curious to see.
I think the fans would react because he's leaving his team. Fans and media would say, "Oh, well, yeah, you're taking less money, but you're doing it to go join LeBron James and them down in there in Miami." So I don't think he would get any benefit of the doubt for taking less money in that situation. Now, if he takes less money to stay with the Knicks, then people would praise him. Then he'd get applauded for his sacrifice. Because then that's showing loyalty to the team. Oh, he's making a sacrifice to help the team get better and all that BS. So.
But shall we learn from the Kevin Garnett example, which is, I wish I'd left sooner.
Yeah.
Look, loyalty is the most overrated value in sports, period. Because essentially, players get penalized for it, but owners never do. Owners never get any feedback from not being loyal to somebody. They are completely, I don't know, they never get convicted of being disloyal to somebody. Players always do, and owners never do. So anyway,
you realize though the difference that teams and organizations run a business, but the players aren't part of that business, right? Like the players don't participate in the business, right? Yes. The players are there for the fans, and they're there for championships, and they're there for their teammates, and all. They're not in it for the business. I mean, please.
They should be.
That's the love of the game. It's the love of the game. They love this game so much. I mean, come on, Adam, you know that. You know this.
That's a mythology I get so frustrated by because players are all entrepreneurs. All 450 plus whatever guys are trying to get into the league, they're all entrepreneurs. Every single one of them is plying their trade, and they need to find the best deal for them possible. Now, it depends on what they want. Do they want to make the most money? Do they want to be remembered well? But the idea, the concept of loyalty to an organization that hasn't been loyal to you, like especially LeBron James in Cleveland, I'm not going to go on because we need to finish up. But every time I hear that word, I flinch. It just, especially in sports, organizations don't have to be loyal, but players do, and it's a double standard that makes me sick.
Well said. Well said.
So yeah, we do have to get on out of here because we've talked for quite a bit. But before we do, I mean, like I said, I think this is going to wrap up our season unless we decide to come back to talk about the draft. But other than that, I mean, is there any parting words that you guys have?
No, I'm currently working on 2 posts. One is about, I guess, sort of what we did here, looking back at the 2014 season and looking ahead to what, this off season.
So let's go around the room here then. And what are you going to do with your summer? Starting with mine.
School.
Summer school, fabulous.
Summer school.
It's a great way to spend summer.
Summer school, that's about it.
Adam, what are you doing with your summer?
Playing volleyball, getting out, enjoying the long days. We got about 18 hours of sunlight this solstice.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, beautiful long days up north. So I'll be getting out, playing volleyball, hanging with my kids, working hard.
That's excellent. And with my summer, I plan to spend some time with my daughter. Hopefully, get her riding a bike. Hopefully get her swimming. 2 goals.
Good luck with that.
And potentially we'll see. Lamont and I play in a basketball league, so obviously we'll be playing lots of basketball this summer. And I hope to be able to start writing about it. We'll see. We'll do like a summer series, like playing in rec leagues on that. So we'll see if I get around to writing about.
Just like playing D&D.
Yeah. This is like the true amateurism right here. I mean, we don't get paid. We have to pay to play.
That's right.
And we definitely do it for the love.
Love of the game.
So, if there's nothing else, gentlemen, I think we're going to wrap this one up. Yeah, it sounds like there's nothing else. So, thank you for joining us. It's been a fantastic season here on the People's Court. We love coming out here every single week and discussing the NBA with you. And we'll be back next season to definitely talk about the Spurs' attempt to repeat wherever Carmelo Anthony and Kevin Love end up, what's happening in LA, the saga going on with Kobe Bryant and Los Angeles Lakers. Yeah, go agree.
Oh, I was gonna say you almost made it out here without talking about, and that's it.
They just got a footnote. That's it. They get a footnote. But again, it's been a pleasure this entire season. Next season we'll be back again. Well, that's another thing to look forward to next season: fantasy basketball. We'll have our updates from fantasy basketball, and hopefully I repeat as champion. Let's go. But that's going to do it for this season of the People's Court. And as soon as I can get this thing over here, gosh. Yeah, normally about this time I would be saying our next episode would be Saturday, June 28th, which is next Saturday. But who knows if we'll be back next week. If not, we'll be back later in the season. So episode 164 of The People's Court, was brought to you by the three of us, your three hosts, Adam Blodgett, Lamont Peoples, and myself, Chris Peoples. The only thing left to say. Can we all say it at the same time, guys? Can we coordinate this? The three of us. You know what I'm about to say right now, right?
Go for it.
And a 1, 2, 3. Court is. Come on! Oh, you gotta get
Court is adjourned.
Court is adjourned.